the Pentagon does an awful lot more than kinetic military activity. For example, when I draw, this is what's coming next, right? President Trump tasked Elon Musk with sicking the Doge dogs on the Pentagon, and depending on how you measure it, the size of waste, fraud, and abuse at the Pentagon ranges from a couple $100 billion. They are the biggest federal agency in all of this. They have $900 billion budget compared to only $44 billion at USAID, and even less at CIA. So the Yahoo Finance, published this a couple years ago, a $35 trillion black hole. If you want to pull up that receipt on screen, just so I don't look like I'm saying this directly myself, but just type in 35 trillion Pentagon black hole. That's larger than the entire national debt. Just the amount of the black hole in the size of the accounting budget of the Pentagon over the years from its continual failing. This is on Yahoo Finance. This is what, 2020, I think. When America was born in 1789, in the first meeting of Congress, there were only 3 agencies that were created in the beginning of time, shall we say. The first act of Congress was to create the Department of State, the Department of Treasury, and the Department of War. And the Defense Department became the Department of War in the Department of War became the Department of Defense in 1948. What people, even now, they're seeing these USAID scandals with funding to the Democrats, or funding to some of these blob internationalist Republicans, or funding to these media institutions. You ain't seen nothing yet when you get to the Pentagon stuff, because USAID was created effectively in part to assist Pentagon activity under humanitarian front. JFK is a martyred figure, and it was JFK who fundamentally supercharged the American military's small wars capacity. This is the terminology in the U.S. Army War College and Special Forces around, sort of not full-scale conventional wars. They're either small-scale paramilitary skirmishes or insurgency, counterinsurgency. So and the problem was JFK was bogged down in Vietnam, bogged down in Laos, and the problems that we were fighting against were not the kind of things that you had the political predicate after a lot of the disasters of the Korean War in 1950, and the international blowback to having formal DoD boots on the grounds. What he believed was vital and necessary to capacity build and supercharge was a paramilitary covert capacity for DoD in the warfighting space that the CIA had at that point in the political war space. And this is done through the U.S. Special Forces and through some of its sub-branches, which are psychological operations, civil military affairs. We can stick with that. But basically, these are civil military is when, in order to achieve the military objective, the thing that needs to be done is actually something at the civil layer. Like, for example, in order to win the war against Russia right now, NATO believes we need to build the single largest military base in all of NATO on the Black Sea coast of Romania that points straight out in a line at Crimea and move this base that's under construction is 100% bigger than the biggest current Air Force NATO base in Europe, the Ramstein base in Germany. We're now moving, as we speak. There are fighter jets and drones being moved from Germany to Romania as we are building this base that will be the point of source projection against the Black Sea Navy of Russia, against Crimea, in order to turn the tide. Well, that's a military operation, right? The NATO military base against the Russian forces in Crimea. But what is actually the most important strategic objective for the military? It's actually not a military one. It's a civil one. See, there's an election going on in Romania right now. You may have heard about this. The canceled election in Romania with Georgescu, this right-wing populist figure who has pledged neutrality in the war. He doesn't want to antagonize America, but he doesn't want to kill the Russians. He wants to basically back NATO off, and he doesn't want to allow this military base to be to be made. Well, that is a civil decision by the elected government of Romania, decided by the hearts and minds of the voters of the Romanian people. But that civil action will either, in NATO's eyes, win the war or lose the war. So the problem is it would kind of be something of a diplomatic incident, shall we say, if NATO rolled in and did, Slobodan Milosevic style air strifing of, air strifes against the Romanian Parliament building, and rolled into the capital with tanks and troops just because the president was responding to the democratic will of the people. So you need another mechanism to influence these civil affairs. Enter civil military. And this is where you get U.S. aid in this, as well as U.S. aid for psychological operations. For example, I've been playing this clip for months now and showing this U.S. military document from the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center. I mean, the special forces, the psychological operations, and civil military training and recruiting center at Fort Bragg, the center of our psychological operations. It's called the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Training Center. But U.S. aid does that work. So, for example, I've been showing a military document from the Biden-Mark Milley era, published in 2021, about how to plan race riots in Africa in order to stop the construction of a port by a foreign government that would allow their forced projection into the Atlantic Ocean, in a sample scenario where the U.S. ambassador tries to get this West African country on the Atlantic coast there to cancel the port construction in partnership with the foreign government, but that government doesn't want to do it, and so they refuse the U.S. ambassador. They refuse the State Department. So this is literally in the planning guide and pitch book for the U.S. Special Forces. It's available online right now. Everyone can look this up. It's all over my X feed. I've posted the link a million times and all the screenshots. But they show the role of Special Forces. They're pitching this basically to get more grant funding. That we can help in near-peer competition actually with foreign countries by having Special Forces destabilize the country, inflame racial tensions between the Africans who work in the factories and the business owners of the foreign government in the local regional development, cause mass walkouts and strikes.
When you're watching all this unfold, one of the things that I've been seeing is that there's been legal action to try to halt some of it. They've been told to destroy any information that they got from certain databases. Like, what's your take on this, and whether any of that is going to hold up?
Oh, 100%. 100. I don't know if it's going to hold up. I think it's going to be a legal dogfight. This is, it's funny because it's sort of a circular dragon eating its own tail, because you're going after the primary soft power projection organ of the blob, because it's been weaponized against Americans. But what is the blob authorized to do? What is U.S. aid authorized to do under statute? Well, something they call judicial reform, which is U.S. aid poaching, funding financially the networks around judges, around courts, around the legal system, around the governance structure of every country on planet Earth. They've won hundreds of awards. Their name has been so pristine for so long. They've been around for almost 20 years, and they were sponsored in order to do investigative hit piece journalism about corruption. And what they do is they go after all of the State Department and USAID and DOD's opponents in the region. So, for example, Jamie, I texted you this beforehand, but if the first thing you want to put on screen are the first two images that I texted you, this is from the USAID.gov website, and I think this will shock people when they see this with the USAID.gov URL right there. So here it is. This is USAID's Strengthening Transparency and Accountability Through Investigative Reporting Program. Okay. What you'll see here is you'll see the life of activity. This fund they are still being funded through this grant. And this is for Europe and Eurasia. And you'll see the countries: Eastern Partnership, Armenia, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, and Western Balkans. If you scroll down, you'll see USAID funding is $20 million. $20 million that our taxpayers paid to listen, they don't report on, kittens being saved from falling out of trees. Everything they do is a hit piece about an instance of corruption that can be used by prosecutors in the area to arrest the political opponents of the State Department. And what you'll see here is capacity. Now, this is the phrase everybody has to know. Capacity building is what this is all built under. That means pumping up the blob's assets. Whenever you see the word capacity or capacity building, it means this thing is useful to us. The more money we give it, the more powerful they are to project our influence. And so if you go back to that page, which is page 2 of this USAID thing, here's what you see. So for $20 million of investment from USAID, here are and this is live on the website. You can find this in the Wayback Machine right now because the USAID website's down. This is USAID, the U.S. government, bragging about the achievements of what they achieved by spending $20 million. At least $4.5 billion in fines levied against targets of these hit pieces. Now, by the way, I should note that the head of the OCCRP was busted in a major documentary that has very little distribution, but I encourage everyone to watch, where he said, because this was I think a year and a half ago or whatnot, but they're up to over $10 billion now.
What's the documentary?
It's on the WikiLeaks X page right now. It's by a group of German journalists who had one-on-one interviews with the head of this group, OCCRP, as well as the USAID grant coordinator and others. And so it's straight from the horse's mouth. And he says in that interview, I believe his name is Drew Sullivan, that it's now over $10 billion. And he brags that is I think he said it was a 20,000% return on investment because all of these dollars were, quote, returned to government coffers. So for $20 million of mercenary media for the state-sponsored hit pieces, the government's got $10 billion back. That's pretty good. That's a 1995 Amazon level return on investment. But now let's get into the darker stuff. 548 policy changes by the government or actions by civil society and the private sector. Now, we don't know if these policy changes are good or bad. Do you think USAID would list them as accomplishments if they were not in furtherance of USAID's or the State Department's foreign policy goals in the region? What they are saying and trying to sort of speak through their teeth, as they say it, is that they proudly sponsored hit piece journalism to ruin people's lives and go after political targets in order to change the policies of foreign governments from the inside. Now, it goes on to say 21 resignations and sackings, including of a president and prime minister. Now, the head of OCCRP in this documentary openly says that their reporting caused, I think it was 5 or 6 different governments to topple and turn over and be transitioned. Proudly. So this is state-sponsored media hit pieces so that prosecutors can arrest presidents and prime ministers to regime change their government and install a more pro-U.S. Political vassal figure in the region. And then the last one is 456 arrests and indictments. And this, again, is listed as a USAID achievement. We don't know what these people did. We don't know, whether they're guilty or innocent, or whether or not these were political prosecutions, like you see right now with the New York District Attorney's offices, which is a whole nother USAID-connected can of worms. But these are state-sponsored hit pieces for hire in order to give the Justice Departments, the prosecutors in a region, the ammunition to arrest the enemies of the state. The prosecutors don't have the capacity to do a whole investigative journalism dig. They might not have access to hacked documents that, for example, the CIA, the NSA, or deeply connected political insiders might be able to give to a group like OCCRP. Now, USAID gets a veto right over who they can hire. OCCRP has to submit an annual work plan to be submitted to and reviewed for approval by the State Department and USAID. And here's the kicker of it all. OCCRP, paid for by us, U.S. taxpayers, dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani's work in Ukraine. This is because, this was part of the 2019 impeachment and, Rudy Giuliani and his work in Ukraine. So they went and dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani, a domestic U.S. citizen and high-profile political figure, actually attorney to the U.S. president. And then that dirt came home and was used as part of the basis for the 2019 impeachment of the sitting president, Donald Trump. That would have never happened unless U.S. aid sponsored that hit piece work, because it's the same foreign policy blob that went after Trump in the first place because of his difference in foreign policy vision around Ukraine, Russia,